They say some doors only open once. For years, I thought mine had been welded shut. My name is Ava Merrick. I'm 32 years old and I live in San Jose, California. I've spent the last 8 years building experimental AI systems in my garage while the tech world celebrated the people I used to work beside, or rather, beneath. So when the envelope arrived, thick, cream-colored, the kind with embossing you feel before you read, I thought it was a joke. Until I saw the sender, Dr. Raymond Greaves, co-founder of Syntheon Labs and the man who once mentored me through a 3-summer internship I thought would change my life. The invitation inside was short and fancy. You are cordially invited to the 22nd Annual Innovators Gala honoring the trailblazers of tomorrow, hosted by Dr. Raymond Greaves, founder emeritus, Syntheon Labs. It was dated for Saturday. Location, San Francisco Design Conservatory. Dress code, formal black tie. I must have read it 3 times. The same man who barely acknowledged my research while I was busting out machine vision prototypes in his basement lab now wanted me to rub elbows with the tech elite? On live broadcast? I didn't tell anyone right away. Not even Dr. Chandra. Instead, I started preparing like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. I found a charcoal satin dress online that felt like armor, stitched my name into the hem like a talisman. I drafted a short acceptance speech, just in case, nothing flashy, just a quiet thank you to those who finally saw me. I even built a gift, a palm-sized micro-drone, hand-etched with the words, to those who lift. 3 nights before the gala, I finally called Dr. Chandra. She was the only one who'd ever really treated me like a peer. Retired now, but still sharp, still kind. We used to call her the iron spine of robotics. Ava, she said when she picked up. You sound out of breath. I'm going, I blurted. To the gala. Greaves sent me an invite. There was a pause. Not a long one, just long enough for a breath of hesitation to sneak through. I see, she said. That's interesting. I didn't let it bother me. I think this is it, Eileen. Maybe I'm finally in. She didn't answer right away. Just let out a sigh and said, well, if you're going, go as yourself. Don't wear their armor. Wear your own. I didn't quite know what that meant, but I smiled anyway. Saturday came fast. I drove into the city before sunset, parked 3 blocks away, and carried the drone in a velvet box tucked into my clutch. As I approached the conservatory, all glass and spotlights, I felt my heart pounding. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt real. And I had no idea that none of it was. Dr. Chandra's house still smelled like sandalwood and solder. That mix of old books, herbal tea, and the faint trace of burned plastic from some long-forgotten circuitry project. It always made me feel 12 again, like the kid who used to sneak into her lecture halls just to hear how she thought. I knocked once before letting myself in. She never locked the door. Said paranoia was for people who didn't trust their own minds. Back here, her voice called out from the den. I stepped in, clutching the little velvet box like it was a wedding ring. The drone inside felt warm in my hand, even though I knew it wasn't. I'd programmed it to blink twice when opened, a tiny, elegant flourish. Dr. Chandra stood beside the couch, looking tired. Her gray hair was pulled into a low braid, and her glasses sat askew on her nose like always. But there was something off about her face, like she'd already braced for an impact I hadn't thrown yet. Thought I'd stop by before the gala, I said cheerfully. I wanted to show you the gift. She didn't say anything. I looked past her, and that's when I saw the TV. Paused on the screen, a glitzy crowd, champagne flutes raised mid-toast, the words 21st Innovators Gala Replay frozen at the bottom in gold font. At the center, clear as daylight, was Raymond Greaves, grinning, microphone in hand, standing beside a young woman holding a crystal plaque. The timestamp in the corner read, last Saturday, 8:13 p.m. I felt my chest cave in. I couldn't speak for a second. Just stared. Eileen, I said finally, my voice hoarse. What is this? She didn't move. Just looked down and then slowly back at me. Her eyes were wet. I hadn't seen her cry since my second-year project burned out and I blamed myself. Even then, she only let one tear fall. Ava, she said softly, I tried. I sat down. Or maybe collapsed. I'm not sure. All I know is that the clutch slipped from my hand and hit the carpet with a muffled thud. It already happened? I whispered. Dr. Chandra nodded once. But the invitation, I fumbled in my coat pocket, pulling it out, pointing to the date. This says tonight. This says May 20th. They altered the one they sent you, she said. The real event was on the 13th. I told them it was cruel, but they didn't care. They said it was cleaner this way. I laughed. A short, hollow sound. Cleaner? They didn't want a scene, she said. Didn't want you showing up uninvited. But I was invited, I snapped. They sent me this. They sent it to shut you up. To keep you thinking you still had a place. They thought if you believed you'd been included, you'd stop pushing your way in. The silence between us filled the room like smoke. You knew, I said quietly. She nodded. I begged them not to do it. I even threatened to pull my advisory credit. But Raymond said, your independent ventures made you a PR risk. I looked down at the box on the floor. At the gift I'd made for the man who'd just publicly erased me. I thought I finally made it, I said. I know, she said. And I'm sorry. But sorry didn't touch it. Sorry didn't even scratch the surface. I didn't even remember starting the car. 1 minute I was on Dr. Chandra's couch. The next I was weaving through the narrow hills toward the Syntheon campus like my hands had a mission all their own. The box sat beside me in the passenger seat, unopened. I thought about throwing it out the window. I thought about launching the drone into the bay and watching it sink. But I didn't. Because I needed them to see it. I needed them to know just how close I had come to forgiving them. The Syntheon compound glowed like a wedding cake under the moonlight, all glass and concrete, trimmed in blues and purples from the perimeter lights. The gates were still open, which meant someone had been celebrating. Probably still were. I parked illegally and walked straight in. Nobody stopped me. Inside, the atrium was strung with silver ribbons and branded signage from the Gala, Innovation Tomorrow, the 22nd annual Gala. Tables still held half-eaten dessert trays and wine glasses. Through the glass doors ahead, I saw them, the old guard, laughing, drinking, posing for photos against a display screen showing highlights from the event. Raymond Greaves stood near the center, holding court in his signature gray suit and polished loafers. His hair had gone whiter, but his voice still carried that smug authority. Around him were familiar faces, Mallory, who used to mock my garage projects, Daniel Cho, who once took credit for my feedback model, even Parker, who had cried during my exit interview but never lifted a finger. I opened the door and walked in. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A few forks froze mid-air. Raymond turned, wine glass in hand, and blinked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Ava, he said after a beat, trying to recover. You made it. I held up the invitation. Funny, says it was tonight. He didn't respond. No one did. I looked around the room at all of them. Their faces, once so revered in my memory, now looked smaller, shrunken, like statues that had cracked under their own weight. Why? I said. Why fake an invitation? Raymond set down his glass. We didn't mean for it to hurt you, but you meant for me to miss it. He exhaled, like I was being unreasonable. Your recent work, it diverges from the lab's narrative. It makes it harder for us to maintain a unified message. What message is that? I said. That innovation only counts when it happens inside your building? Mallory stepped forward, trying to sound diplomatic. Ava, you've been very visible lately. The press coverage, the TEDx talk, the autonomous garden bots. People are starting to associate your brand with Syntheon, and that's not an alignment we authorized. I laughed. Actually laughed. You didn't authorize my success? Danielle shrugged. You kind of made us look bad. There it was. The truth, naked and bitter. You could have reached out. You could have said congratulations. But instead, you lied. Raymond looked me in the eye, his face hardening. You left this lab and made yourself into something we didn't recognize. And when someone doesn't play by the team rules, the team moves on. I stepped closer, lifting the little box and setting it gently on the nearest table. I made you a gift, I said. A microdrone, custom-coded. A symbol of everything you taught me. He didn't reach for it. I see now, I whispered. You didn't forget me. You erased me. Because I didn't become you. Nobody spoke. Even the soft jazz in the background felt like it knew to go quiet. I turned and walked out. Not one of them followed. I don't remember much of the drive home, just the sound of my own breathing and the lights of the highway smearing across the windshield. My hands were still trembling when I pulled into the garage. I sat there in the dark for a while. Engine off. Key still in the ignition. The velvet box was gone, left behind on a linen-draped table like a body no one claimed. At some point I called Dr. Chandra. She picked up on the second ring. Ava. I went there, I said, voice flat. I walked into the post-gala celebration. There was a pause. I figured you might. They were all there. Every last one of them. Laughing about photos, about awards. They looked right at me like I didn't belong in the room. She didn't say anything. He said I make them look bad, I continued. Said my success doesn't match their narrative. She sighed. I'm sorry. I don't want sorry, I said quietly. I want the truth. You already know it. I did. I'd known it for years, but tonight stripped away all the excuses. The polite snubs, the vague rejections, the maybe next cycle grants, they were never about merit. They were about control. My independence was never admired. It was managed, contained, and when it couldn't be, I was discarded. You're better than them, Chandra said gently. You always were. I spent years trying to make them see that, I muttered. I made myself small, quiet, careful, just for the hope of being let in. And now? I'm done knocking. I hung up without saying goodbye. Not out of anger, I just didn't need any more words. Inside my apartment, I paced. Then I stopped pacing and stood still, staring at the framed blueprint of my first solo prototype, hung above my desk. I thought about all the patents filed under other people's names, the grant proposals I ghostwrote, the machine learning framework I designed that still bore someone else's initials in the published paper. I pulled out my notebook and flipped to a clean page. Project Exodus. Separate all remaining intellectual property from Syntheon. Terminate anonymous funding to their incubator. Contact Lynn Reyes. Recover stake in early robotics patent. Documented timeline exists. Rebrand. Publicly. I wrote until my hand cramped. When I finished, I stared at the page for a long time. Not to double-check anything. Just to admire what it looked like, the moment I stopped asking for permission. Lynn Reyes was the kind of lawyer who wore denim to meetings and never once apologized for it. Sharp, quiet, and famously unshakable, exactly what I needed. We sat across from each other in her office, surrounded by wall-to-wall shelves lined with thick volumes and patent files. I hadn't even finished explaining everything before she started scribbling notes like she already saw the finish line. They used your code in the 9X platform without attribution, she asked, eyes narrowing behind thick-framed glasses. I nodded. I built the initial framework during my internship. Then I handed it over, under the assumption I'd be credited. They logged it as group development. She looked up at me. And you have the source timestamps? Every version, including the ones they modified. I kept everything. A corner of her mouth lifted. You really are an engineer. I reached into my bag and handed her a flash drive. There's more. Notes, emails, proposal drafts I wrote but never signed. I also want to stop all anonymous funding. I've been funneling money into their incubator for 4 years. Lynn blinked. You funded them? Silently. I thought if I gave enough, they'd let me back in. She shook her head and leaned back in her chair. Jesus, Ava. I looked away, ashamed. I'm not judging you, she said. But damn. That's a lot of generosity to people who treated you like vapor. I didn't respond. Instead, I slid a legal motion template across the table. I want to formally reclaim my contribution to the 9X robotics patent. I helped build the neural control loop, and I have design notes with dates. She picked it up and scanned the language. We'll file it by Friday. It won't be quiet, though. If you go public with this, I want it public, I cut in. I'm not hiding anymore. She smiled again. A different kind this time. Then let's take it all back. 3 days later, I watched the first filings go live. In black and white, plain as day, Ava Merrick listed as an original contributor on U.S. patent hashtag 1193473R9X, with a pending motion for ownership reassessment, formal disassociation from the Syntheon Innovation Incubator, citing ethical conflict, termination of all private financial sponsorships. I wasn't hiding behind initials, or other people's names. I wasn't background support. I was the headline. Lynn called that night. We're going to rattle some cages. Let them rattle, I said. Let them shake. She hesitated for a moment, then added, you know, I've seen a lot of clients eat this kind of thing for years. But most of them never do what you're doing now. I didn't say anything. I just mean, she continued, you spent so long being silent. And you still came here like this, prepared, clear, with receipts. It's rare. I let her words settle for a second. Then I said, silence was survival. But this is mine now. And for the first time in years, I believed it. It started as a ripple. A tech blogger I didn't even know followed me on LinkedIn. Then someone from a VC firm I'd pitched to 3 years ago emailed me with a single sentence. Heard you finally stepped into the light, well done. Within 48 hours, my name was trending on 2 niche AI forums and tagged in a thread titled The Woman Behind Syntheon's Ghost Code. By the end of the week, the ripple had turned into a wave. Public records showed the patent reassignment motion. The anonymous funding disclosures hit industry newsletters. Everyone suddenly had questions. About my work. About my silence. About how a person could build foundational code for a leading robotics company and get scrubbed from history. I said nothing. Not a tweet. Not a comment. Not a quote. Let the filings speak for themselves. The first message came from a burner email. Can we talk? RG. I deleted it. The second was a voice message, relayed through someone I once worked with briefly. Raymond wants to meet privately, just to clear the air. No press. No tension. I declined. He'd had his stage. He didn't get a backroom apology. Not now. Then the messages turned bitter. One of the researchers, Gina Marsh, a woman I had trained during my last year at the lab, posted an open letter on her social feed. It's heartbreaking to see someone you admired choose sabotage over community. Ava Merrick's decision to pull funding has left our incubator hanging. Brilliant students are losing their projects. All because of one person's ego. The post got 100 comments in 2 hours. Most supportive. A few skeptical. None surprising. I didn't reply. Just bookmarked it. Documentation mattered. Dr. Chunder called that evening. I saw the post, she said. Don't let it get to you. She thinks I owe them something, I said. After all that. She thinks it's easier to blame you than question why the lab can't stand without your support. There was a pause. I'm proud of you, she said gently. Not for making noise, but for finally putting yourself first. I sat on my couch, watching the city lights blink through the blinds. I feel like I should be angry still, I admitted. But I'm not. I just feel clean. You're shedding something, she said. That always feels strange at first. Outside, the sky was beginning to change, that hazy, late-evening blur where nothing's fully light or dark. I thought about all the years I kept my name off things. How I told myself it wasn't about credit, just impact. Now I realized they were the same thing. They didn't erase me because I was loud. They did it because I was quiet. And now that I wasn't, they couldn't look away. I scheduled the pickup for a Wednesday. Lynn said it didn't have to be me. We could send a courier, a tech rep, whatever. But I wanted to see it myself. The moment it ended, the place where I stopped being a name on a badge and started becoming invisible. The incubator site sat behind Cynthian's main campus, in one of those converted factory buildings with exposed beams and fake Edison bulbs. They used to call it the Forge, like it was some sacred ground where dreams were smithied into breakthroughs. I used to believe that. Now I saw it for what it was, a showroom for borrowed ideas, dressed in the illusion of mentorship. I pulled up with my attorney, a young associate from Lynn's office, and 2 private security contractors in plain black polos. No drama, just a message. We're not asking. The front doors were still propped open for morning deliveries. Inside, I could hear muffled voices, the faint clatter of coffee cups. But no one greeted us. No one stopped us. We walked through the space slowly. My prototypes were still in the back, covered with drop cloths, like they'd been too afraid to touch anything since the filings. Ava stuff. That's what they probably called it now. Like I was an old ghost with a name you whisper instead of say out loud. The lawyer handled the transfer paperwork while I supervised the packing. 3 crates, one for the modular AI interface, one for the drone diagnostics, and one for the early mobility shell, the one I hand-welded with my own tools, alone, over 2 summers. Everything fit. Everything was labeled. And still, I stood there longer than I had to. Then I heard it, footsteps behind me. Slow. Uneven. I turned. Raymond Greaves. He looked older than I remembered. Not just in the usual way, but like something internal had cracked. His voice was soft when he finally spoke. Ava, he said, I scanning the room like it might shield him. Just give me 5 minutes. No cameras. No lawyers. Just us. I stood still. No. He blinked. You had your moment, I said. You used it to close the door. He tried to smile. We were a family once. No, I replied. It was never a family. It was a hierarchy. And I don't climb ladders anymore. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The lawyer stepped beside me with a clipboard. We're ready. I nodded and turned to leave. Raymond stayed in the doorway as the team rolled the crates out past him. His arms hung awkwardly by his sides, as if he didn't know where to put them. The same hands that once offered me a reference letter now couldn't even offer a handshake. Outside, the air was clean, bright, brisk with the kind of wind that makes you feel new. We loaded everything into the van. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. It started with a voicemail. I didn't recognize the number at first. I almost deleted it. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe instinct, made me tap play. Hi, Ava, it's Lyra. I was Dr. Greaves's assistant. I know we never really talked much, but I thought you should know, the lab's shutting down. I froze. Lyra's voice was soft, like she wasn't sure if she was tattling or asking for help. Grants are pulling out. Half the funders backed off after your filings. The university's pulling their affiliation. It's all happening really fast. She paused. I could hear her swallow. I don't think Dr. Greaves has said it out loud yet, but it's over. 2 days later, a headline broke on a minor tech outlet. Syntheon Lab faces uncertain future amid IP disputes, funding freeze. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just closed the tab. That night, I got another message, this time from Meera Patel, the lab's former golden intern, the one who used to correct my slides before meetings and reroute my calendar invites without asking. Ava, I don't know if you'll read this, but I've left. I should have done it sooner. It got toxic. I'm sorry for my part in all of it. She ended with a line that hit me harder than I expected. I'm starting over, and I don't know what I'm doing. Just wanted to say I see you now. I really do. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed slowly, deliberately. The path forward is yours to walk now. I hope you do better than we did. No offer, no invitation, no opening, just a clean boundary with room for her to make her own choice. In the days that followed, I learned the full extent of the collapse. One of the researchers had been evicted after the funding dried up. Their grant was tied to my incubator account, now closed. 2 others resigned within a week. The lab's name quietly disappeared from 2 upcoming conference rosters. Dr. Greaves hadn't published a formal statement, but insiders were already calling it a sabbatical year. Sabbatical. That word again. The corporate way to say, we lost our spine and don't know how to admit it. Dr. Chandra called me late one evening. She didn't mention the headlines. All this fallout, she said gently, you okay? Better than expected, I replied. I thought I'd feel guilt, but all I feel is space. That's what freedom feels like, she said. It just takes getting used to. I sat by the window, phone in hand, watching the shadows stretch long across the street. They were unraveling, and I was just beginning. The new office didn't look like much, not yet, anyway. The floors were bare concrete. The walls were still that cold contractor white. No artwork, no polished nameplates, just wires hanging out of junction boxes and the faint echo of possibility. But it was mine. Ava Merrick, founder and CEO. That still felt strange to say out loud. The firm was called Parallax Futures. We didn't do vision statements or mission posters on the wall. We did the work. A small team, 10 people to start, all handpicked. Half of them had once applied to Syntheon and never gotten a call back. Now they ran our R&D pipeline. And Dr. Chandra? She worked with us part-time, 3 days a week. No meetings before 10 a.m. She claimed she was only there to keep the kids honest, but we all knew she was the spine of the place. Only now, it was wisdom without strings. Guidance, not governance. We had 2 provisional patents already filed, 3 more in draft. No board, no committee, no waiting for permission. One night, near the start of December, I stayed late after everyone had gone. Just me, a mug of lukewarm tea, and the soft hum of our prototype running a long-cycle calibration test in the corner. I stood by the window. The city stretched out below me, a different one than I remembered. Or maybe just the same city seen through cleaner glass. My phone buzzed. A text notification, from unknown number. You'll never know how much I regret what we did. Please read this. Attached was a photo of a letter, handwritten. It was from Dr. Greaves. No apology, no excuses. Just a 2-page note, written in shaky cursive, full of the things he couldn't say out loud. We feared your light would eclipse ours. We should have stood beside you instead of in front of you. You were always the future. We just weren't ready to let go of the past. I read it once, then again. Then I folded the phone screen away and opened the drawer beside me. Inside were just a few things, a spare hard drive, a tin of paper clips, and a folder labeled past. I tucked the screenshot inside and closed the drawer. That was all it deserved. A place to sit quietly in the dark. Not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that I had outgrown the version of myself that once begged for a seat at someone else's table. Out the window, the city lights blinked on like stars, one by one. I didn't need anyone to name me anymore. I had built my own name. I didn't need their legacy. I was making my own. I stood there for a while, watching the winter settle in, not cold, not lonely, just clear. A new season, finally mine.